What's up, everybody? What's up, producers of YouTube? I'm KOHO. Today I'm going to walk you through a remake of the track Don't You Cry by Sunday Scaries. It's basically like a tech house, stutter house track, depending how you want to look at it. It's 128 BPM, and we're in G minor for this, okay? A couple things to know going into it. Basic arrangement, there's what I call two verse sections and then two drops, and four main instruments really. Overall, this track is pretty simple arrangement wise and instrumentation wise. I built off of four main instruments and then layered on top of those instruments variations of those instruments for different effects, for different colorations and characteristics, and then obviously just like risers, crashes, things like that, and the drums. In this arrangement, the four main things that I landed on were the piano, two synths. One is more for chords and arps, and then one is the lead, and then a sub. Okay, so you can see here at the top, I layer my stuff generally from low to high frequency in my synth folder here. So I have the main sub, and then I have a secondary sub, and then I have an extra little bass at the end. I have the piano. I have a high synth that's kind of like a pad, more for like atmosphere. And then these four layers here are variations of the main kind of chord and arpeggioed synth. And then the siren synth is the lead synth. I'll start at the piano here, literally just using a stock Logic plugin here. It's just the Studio Grand in Logic. It sounds good. I use a lot of the Logic pianos actually, and they sound pretty decent, especially when you do just some light EQing and you add reverb to it. It just it softens it up. It makes it soft around the edges, and you really can't go wrong. There's nothing in there to offend. Now the next thing that opens this song is this pad, this high synth that we're using, and I'm using Serum for that based off of a Juno patch that I had. Not a whole lot going on with it. Really light and delicate. It's just meant to be this atmospheric kind of thing that hangs in the background, at least in the beginning of the song. And it's just this one ambient note, and it's adding some space. It's in this verse here, except I have it died down in volume, and it climbs back up throughout this verse section. And also a fun little thing is you have this pitch bend that comes in, and you have that rise up and rise back down. And then the last thing in this intro section was we introduce our drums right away. Literally just a kick, clap, and hi-hat. I kept this super simple. It's really about sound selection with drum kits, I mean, regardless, but especially in this song since there's such a simple kit. So I spent some time finding the right samples. The kick and snare together, I have OTT on, just compressing it a little bit, squeezing it. Right, you can hear the difference here. This really pushes it through. Just some really light reverb on it. After that, just is about mixing it into the track to get the right balance and the right punch through. Then we have the hi-hats here. I have three samples in the hi-hat rack here. So the three samples, I'm only using two in the beginning, and just it's the offbeat with a little extra 16th note right here just for a little extra swing. Put the drums together here. Super standard tech house intro. On the automation side of things, as we leave the outro and go into the verse, just a high cut filter pulling down. And same on the hi-hats, and that'll continue through the first 8 bars of the verse as well. And the final piece is I have a riser and a crash to come out of the intro. Both are basically just white noise ones. This is the riser. I added a little reverb too, and this is the crash. Same deal. Very light in the background and just super subtle to move you into the verse. By the way, I didn't say this at the beginning. Just pull the vocal top line off of the track so that you can really hear the whole thing come together instead of just playing the instrumental. I also use it as I'm making the beat because sometimes if you're just working on the instrumental without the vocal, you'll forget to leave space for it and you'll overcompensate with other parts of the track that's meant to be where the vocal goes, but you fill in the space with other instruments because you're not hearing the vocal and you know that something's missing. So it's helpful to have there to hold that space in the track so that you don't accidentally fill it in with unnecessary noise. And that's the intro. Piano, pad, drum kit, little riser and crash. And now into the verse.
Don't be sad, don't you cry, just let go of your pain. And when you fall asleep, know tomorrow's a new day. Don't be sad, don't you cry, just let go of your pain. And when you fall asleep, know tomorrow's a new day.
So we're basically working the same thing. So that's going to be real quick. The only new instrument that's introduced in the verse is the sub, the main sub. Super low, all just about filling the low frequency there. And this one gives it some body in the mid-range. Okay, and then the two of them together. And you could hear how they fill each other out then. This gives the low end range to the second one, and the second one gives more body and color to the first one. I'll show you these in Serum here. It's from a Steve Aoki sub preset that I have. Really basic. Just a sine wave. It's like, I don't even think there's really anything else on it. Just filtering off some high end. It's really about as basic as it gets. This is from a preset pack from Sam Smyers. Shout out to the freaking GOAT of synth preset remakes. This guy is insane. If you don't know his stuff, go watch him. Go look up his channel. He will blow your mind with how easily he can pick apart a sound and recreate it. I've learned so much from him. So shout out to him. So I started with this preset because I knew it has a lot of width and kind of dimension to it that I knew I wanted to add to this sub. How you get that is a theme I'll go through in some of the other synths that I built. For one, adding voices to it is super important. So you see Wavetable A has 7 voices and B has 8 voices, and that itself spreads out the spectrum of sound that you're getting. And those different voices give it one of my favorite qualities that a bass can have, that a sub can have, is this. You feel this movement, you feel this pull and swaying in it. That really makes it alive and feels like it's in a room and it's kind of like moving around with you. Those are the 2 subs that are then used throughout the rest of the song here. I don't add any modifications to those throughout. But I think the most important part to get out of this is combining 2 sounds to gain one full sound that you use in conjunction with each other, rather than going super deep into tweaking one sound and trying to get everything out of it that you want. Sometimes you dilute what the original sound is, and by layering these 2, you get the best of what each one does individually, and then you get to combine those in a way that they harmonize together. Yeah, that's really it. The verse is super simple. It's a kind of a quiet section. So I'm going to introduce you to our lead synth here. It's this, I call it a siren synth. It's just what it sounds like to me. It's this like has this really whiny atmospheric sound to it. It is a modified saw wave in both wavetables and the sub here. Back to the theme of having multiple voices to give it width. We got 5 voices on each of these. And then additionally, different from the sub and add some more width and variation to it, is that this is fine-tuned up and this wavetable is fine-tuned down, so that there's some natural dissonance within the tuning of them that pulls them apart. The 2 most important effects on this synth are going to be the LFO tool that gives it the stutter effect, and then the note slide that really gives it the whiny part of the siren, where each note kind of glides into each other. And to me, that's what the thing that like makes it way more emotional, that the notes kind of like bleed together. So that's the porta in Serum, is like your note glide that bleeds each note together. So I'll show you here, right? So that's where it just really blends together so nicely. It's such a smooth sound then, instead of having hard cutoffs from each note. The LFO tool I'm using here, Shaper Box, works really great for me. You may know LFO tool as well. And you can do this in Serum too. The reason I like to do it sometimes outside of Serum is just so that you have a little more control. You can turn it on and off more easily for experimentation and variation. Rhythmically, this is set to a 16th note, so it turns on at the start of each 16th note, turns off the middle of each 16th note. With it off, it's still very cool, but this adds so much more tension and excitement to it. So yeah, I mean, this is like the essential effect for all of Stutter House. The main effect is really straightforward. You can get into modifying the frequency of it and the rhythm of it and add or subtract to the intensity of the filter. Basically, like you can soften this to more of like a sine curve so that it's more of a flowy cutoff instead of a hard staccato cutoff. Yeah, but that's the essential part of this synth. And then on here too, I have 2 reverbs. One is again the Logic Silververb on one of my buses, same thing from before. And then this one, I have a Valhalla Supermassive on it. This one's more for like space and dimension, more high-end atmosphere in the reverb, whereas the Silververb is more for the body of the sound. And then the Supermassive adds atmosphere and dimension to it. You'd hear if I just solo the Supermassive reverb, like you're really only getting this very delicate high end, but it adds a lot of white noise color to it. And then the Silververb has much more of the body of the sound in it. So combined, they really fill out the spectrum in terms of the reverb. And that's about it for the makeup of the sound. Now, how it gets introduced in the song is in this little kind of riser thing here, which all I did was I piano rolled 1 note across here and then just use automation to roll it up. It kind of is just like this really dramatic filter open on the sound, almost as if like you're holding the sound, and then when the build starts, you start actually playing it. So you're just like holding 1 monotone note, and then you get into the main sound in the build. The next of our essential sounds that come in the build is this rhythm synth. Playing back again with our G. We have our D sharp, similar to how we had in the piano, except this tryout is laid out closer together than it was in the piano. But it's following a similar pattern. Okay, and this is another saw-based synth. 2 different modified saw waves here. Well, just this one. 2 different saw waves here. Kind of straightforward after that, though. The main part of this sound is about getting it plucky, which is thanks to this envelope here in Serum. You have a super short attack and decay. It's basically immediate, and that's routed to the filter on it so that it pulls the filter up for a split second and pulls it right back down, so you only hear the sound really fully for that moment. That's how you get the really tight sound. As you'll see if I pull out the hold here so that the sound is held longer. obviously it's held then, and the sound sticks. And all the other modifications to this, wavetable B is down an octave from wavetable A, and we have a sub in here as well. And then I added just distortion through a bit crusher to get it a little grittier. Add a little more to the high end to stand out. I've pulled down the low end here in the EQ. Just don't need it, and it makes the sound sharper. And then 2 reverbs here. We have the Valhalla Supermassive again on a bus, and a Space Designer from Logic in here as well. So kind of the same deal in the way I'm blending the reverbs from the lead. That's those 2 sounds, and in the beginning of the build is really those 2. That's it. That just because it's kind of the introduction then of the main theme of the song. So these take center stage for a moment. You bring your hat in, start building the rhythm, start building the build-up. I have a bigger white noise riser coming in here. So you go, like, a cool just arrangement trick to notice here is that in the verse, you're introducing the sub, right? And then you take it away immediately, and you're at these 2 high-end synths. So you go from this transition of a really full spectrum with low end to a much thinner high-end section, using the sound spectrum to create some tension between the verse and the build. Right, so you have this fullness, and then you're kind of up in the air, and then the whole build is bringing everything back to give you the full spectrum again in the drop. Classic technique in dance music, and you can really apply that thinking to any kind of music production, this tension between using the low end and the high end, featuring one versus the other between your sections. I want to show you a super simple modification of this riser, because I put a little filter on it so that it has this kind of choppiness to it. That is from our old friend Shaperbox again, except look how fast this guy's going at 1/64th note of your time signature. So just that really fast choppiness. And a tiny bit of verb, ain't much more to it than that. And I'll show you what I have in the way of automation then through this section. It's basically just in last 2 bars of the build that lead into the drop. What they do is they pull a lot of the volume and the high end information away, and then the vocal chop shines through, and then you put everything back in for the drop. On our rhythm, on our chords here, pulling down the volume, and then on our lead, on our siren synth, pulling the volume way down, and they make room for the riser and the vocal to fill in that space. It just adds more dramatic tension, pulling as much as you can away to create this emptiness right before the drop that gives you everything. It just accentuates the explosion of the drop and gives you that much more energy when you hear it. And now, drop 1. Okay, so here we have our subs back again, our piano's back. Now here, what was our chord synth that I just showed you, I have a modified version of it here that goes to playing the arpeggio that's in the background of the drop here. If you recall from the beginning, I said I made 4 different versions of this synth. They're all using the same basic bedrock of the preset. I just found it easier to split them into different voices so that I could modify them more individually without having to do that through automation. And that's kind of just a subjective choice as a producer. Is like, how much do you want to automate things versus how much do you want to separate things? You know, where you're routing everything. It's kind of the choice you have to make about how overwhelmed your arrangement might get, or your project might get. You know, it's not fun if you're looking at 100 different tracks and you don't know where things are, and you got to remember why exactly this one is different than this one. In this case, it was a small enough project that it made sense for me to split into layers more than it did to do automation. Okay, so I'll solo this one out here. Okay, so it's just playing an arpeggio of the original chords that were introduced here. You could tell this one's a little grittier, a little harder. I added some distortion to it that was different than the original. Changed the sub. The original one has a sine wave sub. This one in the drop has a full saw wave sub. Okay, I added some voices to the wavetable B here to open it up a little more, and added some verb on here as well. Ran a filter. This one I've added a lot more reverb on the bus. Now we have our lead synth taking full force here. And you'll notice what I did here is that I have, so you'll maybe be questioning, why do I have two shaper boxes on the chain here? It's because I've used two for different rhythms. One is for here in the build, where it's just straight 16th notes. In the drop, to accentuate that pattern more. And it's almost like engineering a sidechain in a different way, and this makes it more dramatic by dropping out the first note of a 16th note pattern. So you're just hitting 3 of the last 4 16th notes in a quarter note. And so that really gives it this more accentuated effect of the kick coming through super strong on each one of the quarter note, and then the synth popping back up after the kick comes in. Again, kind of like an accentuated sidechain effect. Just a different way to get it. We have, in the beginning of the drop, just the kick, then a little fill here. That introduces the clap. And then you have everything of the drums back in together. The full pattern of the swung hats and the kick and the clap. So that's the first drop. And like I said at the beginning, it's really not that complicated. So what's important for this song is really fine-tuning the sound choices for everything, because they end up taking up so much room that anyone that's a bit off is going to weaken the overall power of this. So there's in the drop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 layers in this first drop. And it's massive. Like, this drop is huge. It hits hard. It's powerful. It takes up a lot of room. It's only 6 layers to it. So it should emphasize to everybody that you don't need to overload your projects with a bunch of layers in order to get something that sounds good. 90% of it is sound choice, and then the rest of it is mixing those sounds in together the right way via effects and volume mixing. Yeah, and so that's our first drop right there. Now, this post-drop section, we're pulling everything away, getting super quiet, turning down. So you can hear the piano still echoing back there. Here's where we pull down the high cut filter on the piano a little bit just so it softens up. One of the main things I had to engineer here for the post drop, I imagine this is maybe not exactly how they did it, but this is a really common way that you can engineer transitional effects into your projects using the sounds you already have. And by doing that, you really deepen the richness of your mix rather than dropping in a bunch of samples that are kind of foreign to what you have going on already. So I'm talking about these 3 tracks here, which I'll zoom in on. And what they are 3 different printed versions of our lead synth. Okay, so you have the synth itself. Then these 3 are different amounts of basically printed reverb from that synth. So I'm exporting this one sound and then turning the reverb way up, printing it again. So I'm getting this just blown out kind of background noise from it rather than the sound itself. It's kind of like a homemade way you can make your own risers and your own downers. You have then just the noise resulting from the sound rather than the actual body of the noise itself. So here's kind of like the progression that I'll take you through. So you have the first synth sound that, by the way, I am pulling down the high cut filter on. We've reduced the volume a little bit. And then export that. What you get is this sound. I think maybe I've already bounced this twice, but yeah, this is the second bounce of it. So it's already a reverbed out version of it. And then I add the shaper box onto it. This is now my soft curve, like I talked about before, rather than the hard square cutoff. So you get that more wavy in and out of the sound. We have then this version. This is where I use the supermassive reverb. You hear as much more of like the white noise of the reverb in there. Boost the volume a lot. And then a different, slightly different shape on the shaper box there. And this one is a reversed version of this that then becomes our riser into the verse. Okay, and we have this special little guy here that I almost missed in the original mix. Just subtle little kind of light tom hit. And just adds a little rhythm and a little more variety to that section. The last thing to note of how I kind of pull this all together here is gonna lead me to talking about how I organize my tracks, often in larger groups. That makes it easier to add pseudo like master effects to these things. So they use them very sparingly, but this is where they're perfect for, I've found. And for big section transitions, I just put an EQ on my whole synth group so that I can automate that filter down on all of them at the same time without having to do them individually. And so it's, you know, it's like the same as just twisting the knob, twisting your EQ knob on your DJ decks. This does that effect for you since you put it on the whole group. Now into our second verse here. We have our subs returning. Then the other main feature basically of this is the return of our pad synth that we haven't used since the intro. There's a totally different thing going on here with it. This is like using the LFO tool to the max on this. So super simple melodic pattern on this pad. But what's cool here is how we're using the filter in a very rhythmic way. So this is the LFO within Serum itself. I've ended up finding to be the best way to do it. For this one, modifying the cutoff, same as we had in our rhythmic synth, right? Now the difference is this is going to be the most automated track of this whole entire project if I show you all of these here. So we have our initial volume swell. And then this purple line of automation is the LFO rate in Serum. And you're affecting how quickly or slowly that envelope is moving, that LFO tool is moving to pull the filter open and closed. So how to do this and have it transition so smoothly is to modify the rate not based on tempo like we've done before with the shaper box, but in literal I don't even know what this is, literal like speed and hertz it is in this, but I guess it's just the speed of the wave, or like the speed of sound. I don't know. I don't know exactly how to explain it. Because then if you do it by tempo and you're changing the tempo, you're gonna have these hard drop-offs between like 16th notes to 32nd notes to 64 notes that don't make it smooth. You're gonna hear those drop-offs within the sound. If you do it by speed, you can just gradually roll it up and down without those transitional drop-offs. So we have it speed up, pull back, come back up again. And I've just repeated it for the build then, the same rhythm there. But that's kind of a fun thing. Another very essential part of this Stutter House sound, using that filter then in a more exciting way that gives some more life and movement to just one sound that'd be pretty boring by itself, honestly, and would just be like a kind of atmospheric thing, like how we were using it in the beginning, and then turns it into a rhythmic tool. So pretty cool. Lastly, we have the piano coming back in this syncopated version of itself. Very subtle, but it gives it some much needed chordal voicings in this section that's otherwise pretty empty. We have kick and the hi-hat enter again. Here on the kick, we're pulling up the low cut filter so that it's more high end and you're missing some of the bottom of the kick that we're going to give back to it in the drop. And we're using only one of the hi-hat samples in here, so it's a lighter sound. Now, in our build, our second build, it is a slightly more filled out version of the first build. So same effect, we're pulling out the sub, we're pulling out the low end. We don't even have the kick here, so all the low end is gone. And we are back to our rhythmic synth, our lead, our high atmospheric one that we just built with the new LFO filter, and we have our hi-hat pushing us along. Now here, you'll notice where I have most of the variations of our chord synth, and they're all doing slightly different jobs. So first of all, these two are both the arpeggio pattern that was going on in the first drop, and this one is syncopated chords. So I'll play them for you together here. Exciting, like this really starts to blow open the track. I start to feel so alive and taking up so much room. So this is the chords. This is the same as we had in the first build, same sound, and we're adding the arpeggio into it. And you'll notice these are much higher notes being played than where the chords are. And mostly what's different is that this one is super distorted. And that's from the actual serum distortion and the dimension that I added to it. So this just adds a lot of grit. This one is much more for just like high-end character and grit than it is about being the body of the sound. As you can hear, this one has a much fuller body, playing lower notes. Combined, following each other in pattern, octaves apart, but add a lot of high-end grit to it, and you add in the chords underneath. And just nice full sound to it. Then on top of that, of course, we have the return of our lead, which comes in quietly. I have the filter coming back up, and that's going to build up over the course of this build here. And the last thing to get into really with the end of this build is the transitional effects. So featured from before, this white noise riser with the shaper box on it. We have a smaller white noise riser that we've used before. It's kind of like a reverse crash sound. I layered two different kinds of snare risers. This first one was a sample that I found. And this one is just a repeated snare sample, because I needed it to be longer. And so the two of them together, what they're doing, this is really the crux of the rhythm of and the body of the sound. And this one, you can hear, adds a lot more high end to the spectrum, and the two of them together, especially with this just coming in at the end, really accentuates the rise. And so they work together in that way. I think I basically just have a volume swell, volume automation on the regular snare riser. And so those all come together. They all come to a head half a bar before the drop. And you'll notice here what we've also pulled away. Hi-hats cut out here. Our arpeggio cuts out here, and our high synth cuts out here to just leave the ending notes of our main rhythm chords, our lead, synth, and the vocal chop. So you have, again, using the pull away of some effects that will come back in the drop to accentuate that value. All right, we're almost there, guys. Now, final drop section. This is where everything comes together. We're using pretty much all of the layers that we've built up over time here. Our subs are here, our piano's here, our high synth is here, our rhythm chords are here, our lead siren is here, all of our drums, and then including a couple new layers, we have this small bass that's more of like a rhythmic bass than it is a melodic bass. Super classic tech house sound. And that really accentuates, you'll hear how it plays nice with the kick, and then it gives the kick some more swing to it when you play the both of them together. So they kind of blend, and they do the classic job of a bass, which is like blending the rhythm into the world of melody. We're almost there. Yes, so the high synth, we've brought the frequency of the LFO filter back to 0, which means basically that it's off effectively. So now you have the long drawn out atmospheric note again instead of the rhythmic cut of it that we had before. We have two versions of the arpeggiated chord here. This one you'll hear has a little more movement to it. Kind of this vroom, 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 have more of a pull to it rather than just the hard pluck that we had before. So you'll notice I pulled the attack up a little bit, only 50 milliseconds on this envelope. This one is also actually sidechained to the kick, so it has more of the push and pull because of that as well. And we have our lead at full force here. One of our full patterns on our kick and snare, and our hi-hats, everything going on here. That's kind of it, and then everything just rides out the second half of the drop here. Yeah, so now we can go into the post drop here, taking out the main sub for just the kind of mid sub. We have our rhythmic bass in here still, piano still going, high synth, only one of the arps, our lead, and then I've dropped back in two of our printed kind of atmospheres from the lead synth just to keep some of the noise going on in there, have a fuller spectrum in this section that as they do. In our outro, we take basically everything away. This is the most different section of the track, basically because it's kind of, to me, in my mind, it's just made to then mix into some other tech house song. So you're on the drum beat, you have this rhythmic bass that's in, that now sounds really cool when it's able to be featured so much more audibly. but very classic tech house sound. And you have this really funky synth that comes in at the end. Honestly, this was the hardest synth to remake. I'm not gonna lie to you, because it's super weird. It's definitely not exactly what they have in the original song. And I tried so many ways to get the kind of like funky wateriness and waviness that it has to it. Got multiple voices on it, kind of panning around, flange or phase or chorus, all of your classic like weird sound modulation effects. And then on the rack itself, I have another chorus, this Logic ensemble, and a little bit of wah effect on it to get it even more wavy. We have once more our filtered riser out of here. That's the end of the track, guys. So I think that covers basically all of it. I've gone through the sound selections, how I made the basic makeup of the synths that I've used, arrangement markers, transitional effects and pieces. Like I said in the beginning, it's really a pretty simple arrangement, pretty simple instrumentation, and it's just about getting sounds that really knock hard. So this is a good lesson and reminder for that, how important your sound choice is. Spend the time setting things up in the beginning. It's like investing in the song from the forefront so that those sounds then can carry you through the rest of what you're doing. You want to set up the house, and then you can decorate it with all the effects and the transitions and everything that you're going to put in later. Set yourself up with a really strong drum kit and some just like great, exciting, interesting synth sounds or whatever instruments you're going to use. Let those be the body of your track, and then you figure out how to fill in the gaps, how to blend them together section to section and vary them in tone and sound to make the whole track interesting. But that's it, guys. A couple effects tracks that are just basically risers, crashes, things like that. It's one drum kit essentially, and then like I said, 4 main instruments in the piano, the sub, your rhythm synth, and our lead synth, and then just layers on top of that to give it character. And there's your track. Yeah, go listen to the original track. It's a sick track. Don't You Cry by Sunday Scaries. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this. If you got anything out of it, let me know what you learned. If I missed anything that you feel like is essential to understanding how this track comes together, please let me know that as well, so I can keep improving my tutorials and give you better information and more thorough information. I hope you enjoyed. I'm KOHO. Thanks for sticking around, guys. I appreciate you giving me the time here and hanging out, and I'll see you soon.